Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2010 computer animated movie Legend of the Guardians, The Owls of Ga'Hoole. Now, this movie is one of those films that has honestly been pretty forgotten about. Even though it did make a decent amount of money, it cost 80 million and it made 100 and I think it was 140 million worldwide. It wasn't a massive hit. I think because of advertising and because of other expenses and because of the amount of time that went into making this movie, it did not turn into a franchise because it did not make 300, 400, 500 million worldwide. So I do feel that the studio probably looks at this film as a little bit of a disappointment, considering its middling box office. That being said, I think this is a gem. I think this is actually a really solid film in its own right for what it is. It's based on a series of books called The Guardians of Ga'Hoole that I've never read, but I've heard that this film is fairly accurate to the source material. And this is one of the rare films in Zack Snyder's filmography that is not a dark, edgy movie. Now, this does have some dark elements. This does have some talons, so to speak, but it's not what I would call a really edgy, dark, serious tale. In a lot of ways, this is Zack Snyder playing around in a sandbox that's more family friendly. And I was really surprised by how well he worked within that environment. I would say this is honestly one of his most underrated films because a lot of people don't really talk about this one. A lot of people don't mention this when they talk about Zack Snyder. And I think it's too bad. It shows how multifaceted of a talent he is as a director. I thought he did a terrific job directing this movie. The animation is really energetic. The slow motion, which is his trademark, is used to absolute perfection at times in this film. Sequences where the owls are flying through the storm and there's lightning and there's rain is just absolutely astonishing. There's a lot of shots in this that I feel Snyder just excelled at making these sequences soar and just really appear to be quite admirable in so many different ways. His handling of angles, of zooms, of pans, of different directions, it was really impressive. And for a guy who had never directed animation before, it definitely didn't look like it because he was so in his element, which is crazy because it really wasn't his element. And because he was so good at this, I honestly feel it's a shame that we haven't seen more from Zack in this genre. And I think Zack Snyder works better as a director when he's focusing on the visuals. He's focusing on the style and the flair. He's focusing on the technique. He's not focusing on the story because I don't think Zack Snyder is a very good storyteller. I think he's a great director. If we're talking about visual effectiveness, if we're talking about sheer talent from a filmmaker perspective, I think that Zack Snyder is one of the more talented directors out there. He definitely knows what he's doing, and he's really good at it. But when it comes to storytelling, when it comes to politics, when it comes to things like that, that's where he falls short. And that's why a lot of his more recent films to me have been of pretty lesser quality because of the fact that he's trying to be more of a storyteller and less of the guy behind the camera. Now, for the most part, I felt the screenplay by John Orloff and Emil Stern, I thought it was excellent. I thought it was a really good script. There were a lot of good messages here for adults and kids. There were some cliches here, like the brother the older brother who doesn't want to be a part of the flock and joins the bad guys and ultimately becomes corrupted, and the younger brother has to try to save him but ultimately can't, that kind of thing. um and there are some moments that are a little predictable, but what really worked with this film was the characters. It did a great job making me care about owls, about these owl characters, as if they were uh, every bit as real and every bit as relatable as human characters. I feel that there was a lot to like about this script when it comes to the characterization and the depth and the overall story and how things unfolded, and also the darkness when it did at times kind of remind me of something like Secret of the Nim, or these kind of old school animated movies from like the 80s and 90s that weren't afraid to be a little bit darker. They weren't all sunshine and rainbows. And the humor, when it is there, it's not oppressive, it's not excessive, and it's not lazy. So that's another thing that I really liked, is that in the screenplay, despite it being a kids movie, you didn't have fart jokes and burps and other stuff. I mean, you had stuff involving owl vomit, but that makes sense. And then they incorporated it into the plot in a way where it wasn't just comic relief. Um, and when it comes to the action, like when there are sequences where the owls are fighting one another, I thought that was genuinely exciting and thrilling. And I feel that there's just a lot to praise when it comes to this film's story and the narrative. There's a lot of interesting things too that I thought were quite sinister and quite memorable, like how the evil group of owls, which like to call themselves the Pure Ones, they kidnap owl babies. They kidnap young owls and they have them stare at the moon. And then apparently, if they stare at the moon and they fall asleep, then they become like zombies, and they are no longer all there. I thought that was an interesting thing, and I like the fact that the main villain is some owl that was messed up so badly by the Guardians in battle that he doesn't have a beak anymore. So he manufactured a helmet that has a beak on it, and he calls himself Metal Beak. Um, and it was just a legitimately compelling tale, and it just made me want to see more, and that's why it sucks that it didn't do well enough to warrant more entries in this series, because the animation is gorgeous. There are so many shots in this that are just absolutely beautiful to look at, and you could tell that there was so much passion and pride behind the animation here. This was a 3-year project. This film took 3 years to complete, and it definitely appears to be a total labor of love on all facets and on every level. And I mean, to showcase an example of how much time went into this movie, the opening credit sequence, that alone took 3 months to animate. So we're talking a major investment here by tons of different people. And to me, it paid off, but to the studio, it didn't, because it didn't really make enough to warrant that kind of investment. Uh, and when it comes to an animated film, the animation, that's definitely a paramount thing in terms of the quality as well as the writing. But voice acting is equally as important, because the voice actors are really what brings these characters to life. And I felt this voice cast was really top notch. I mean, you got Jim Sturgess, who voices Soren. Thought he did a wonderful job playing the film's lead, the protagonist, the wide-eyed owl who is all in love with and infatuated with the idea of the Guardians and gets to go on this journey and eventually becomes one himself. Emily Barclay is Gylfie. She's the tiny owl that becomes his friend along the journey. Ryan Kwanten, he plays Clud. He's his rude older brother who joins the Pure Ones and becomes a villain. I really felt that he did a great job too, bringing this character to life. David Wenham, who was the narrator in 300, he's almost unrecognizable as Digger, who is this comic relief burrowing owl, who also becomes friends with Soren and Gylfie and helps them try to find the Guardians. Anthony LaPaglia, as a Twilight, he's this great owl. He's a great gray owl. Sorry, he's a hollow mate with Digger, and I felt that David Wenham and Anthony LaPaglia had some really great chemistry. They were a great pair. Helen Mirren was a really uh, strong villain as Naira. Geoffrey Rush. He also did a great job as uh, Isilrib or Lise, Lies of Keel. Um, Soren's idol. Joel Edgerton, he voiced Metalbeak. Definitely something that I did not really see coming in terms of Joel Edgerton. I thought he wasn't really a guy that I would think of voicing a villain in an animated movie, and he did a great job. You'd think that would be Hugo Weaving, but Hugo Weaving was playing the nice characters. He was playing Soren's father and Noctis and Grimble, who is an owl that helps Soren and Gylfie escape earlier on in the film after they're captured by the Pure Ones. And you had Adrienne Defary as Eglantine. It's a little kid owl. So what she was asked to do, she did a good job with that. And you even have Sam Neill who plays this gray owl who's actually a spy and turns on the Guardians. And it was nice to hear him. Uh, so yeah, overall, really solid, uh, spectacular voice cast in so many different ways. Yeah, it doesn't have like massive big stars, but that doesn't mean anything. I think in a lot of times with these animated movies by these studios, way too often you have star power that's first and foremost, and as a result, you tend to kind of not have the best performances because you have a lot of movie stars who aren't necessarily the best voice actors. And there are some other things about the movie that I felt were really well done and worth mentioning. I mean, I like the music by David Hirschfelder. It's not one of my favorite scores, but I do feel it had a sense of adventure and epicness to it that suited the film well. I honestly really like the editing by David Burrows. There's a lot of edits in this that are very flashy and very quick, but not to the point where it feels like it's too distracting. There are a lot of moments where the editing lets things breathe, lets the sequences really fly as high as they possibly can. And it's not that long either. Like it's only 97 minutes and that's with the end credits. You take out the end credits, it's even less than that. It's a really quick fly through a wonderful world of wonder and awe and action and intrigue and a little bit of darkness, and it's just one of those films that I really thoroughly enjoyed. I would say that this is definitely one of my favorite CGI animated movies that I've seen over the years. And if you hadn't have not had the opportunity to see Legend of the Guardians yet, because it doesn't seem like it's your cup of tea, or you're not really into kids movies, uh, I think it's worth a watch, because I don't think it's just a kids film. Like, there's a lot of things about this that I think adults can really appreciate, because of that, the fact that it does have talons, it does have a sharpness to it. Its beak is not dull. It's not afraid to be a little darker, a little meaner. Uh, and I think that that's for the better in the long run. So anyway, that's my thoughts on Legend of the Guardians, the Owls of Ga'Hoole. Thanks for watching my review, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.